Politics of corruption as the MPP fights back, dismissing NDC's claims President Akufo-Addo and his administration are neck deep in corruption, challenging them to provide evidence of their record in fighting the canker.
People cannot be hanged because the NDC screams so. Everybody deserves his or her day in court on any accusation. The NDC have no record, none.
And then later, why the Africa Center for Energy Policy is criticizing the Millennium Development Authority for shifting blame onto others, including the vice president in the PDS scandal.
There was a very crafty attempt to exonerate the transaction advisors and start pointing fingers at some people.
And Top Stories are always brought to you by Bond Savings and Loans. Your success, our passion, also brought to you by Gasem Cement, the nation builder. Vodafone, the future is exciting, ready. Now, the new Patriotic Party has rubbished claims by the NDC that the president and his government are supervising corruption at all levels. This is all a spin-off from the president's statement today at the bar this week at the bar conference, at which he laid out his government's strategy to dealing with corruption, but also insisting that he cannot be tagged as the individual who clears his appointees anytime they're accused of corruption. Well, according to the NPP, which has been addressing its own press conference today, on the back of a similar one by the opposition NDC, government fight against corruption is unrivaled of any leadership in Ghana since independence, contrary to claims by the opposition NDC that the fight against the canker has been lost. What we're going to do tonight is also to subject both sides to some fact-checking, looking at what the facts show as per the Corruption Perception Index. Well, the NDC at this news conference yesterday outlined a litany of corruption cases they say have plagued the government, adding the commitment to dealing with same has simply been absent.
Akufo-Addo must accept full responsibility for the unenviable accolade as the most corrupt president in Ghana's history, which hangs around his neck, and find out why it is so. He believes somehow that flowery speeches and empty rhetoric delivered in an acquired accent is what convinces people that corruption is being fought. The Ghanaian people have been long aware that corruption is only fought on the basis of concrete steps aimed at preventing it from occurring in the first place, detecting its occurrence, and punishing those engaged in it. Yesterday, at the bar conference in Takoradi, President Akufo-Addo missed yet another opportunity to demonstrate that he should be trusted when it comes to fight against corruption. At a time when he and his government are producing corruption scandals at an unprecedented rate, one would have expected the president to use the opportunity of his address at the bar conference to reassure the nation of credible efforts to weed out the destructive canker. Instead, the president chose to play the proverbial ostrich and bury his head in the sand.
Well, as expected, the MPP called his own press conference today. John Bwedu, the General Secretary of the MPP, addressed that, and he went detailing what he believes, and in fact, the facts as he saw it, as how this government had dealt with corruption, in what he claims to be a far superior way to what the NDC did. He cites the mining law, the vigilantism law, also the setting up of the special prosecutor as the evidence to show commitment on the part of the government to fight corruption.
A historic first in Ghana, the president directs our attention to the passage of two pieces of legislation with stiff sentences in two areas of our national discipline: political vigilantism and illegal small-scale mining. Apart from increased budget allocation to the relevant agencies, he has fulfilled a major campaign promise to take the incumbents political influence out of corruption by swiftly establishing office of the special prosecutor, and almost everybody in this country agreed that it is a major step in strengthening our resolve to stem the tide of corruption. And by the choice of the president is also exemplary. It is only the NDC that doesn't believe that the choice of the president.
Well, that's John Boydu there addressing that press conference earlier today at the party's headquarters. That's not all he said at this particular meeting. He says the NDC has no moral authority to even talk about corruption and criticize another government for it.
People cannot be hanged because the NDC screams so. Indeed, the screaming ruins reputations. Everybody deserves his or her day in court on any accusation. The NDC have no record to compare all these that I've stated about. They have no record, none. The NPP invites the public, especially thought leaders, to critically weigh the governance styles of the two political parties and to lead the public crusade for good governance with open government as championed by the president. Everybody must be free or feel free to interrogate government actions. But the NDC campaign of falsehood and mischievous political intent really fails the test of serious and purposeful governance.
Well, the NPP cites the work that the government had done in the illegal mining space, fighting it as one of those areas where it should be praised for its work against corruption. The party challenges the opposition NDC to state a policy position to deal with the issue with illegal mining, following the new mining law, which now prescribes a minimum of 15 years and maximum of 25 years for offenders.
It is well known and unarguably that the NDC superintended the explosion of Galamsey. We challenge them to come out with their policy position about the future of Galamsey, following the passage of the legislation by the NPP government. Under the bold and courageous leadership of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, Ghana will achieve a clean mining regime capable of sustaining the environment and incomes for the future.
Another allegation that had been leveled by the NDC against the government and the president is the allegation that the president is running a family and friends government. Well, John Boydu has been responding to that today.
We did not go into family and friends cabals that have run the NDC for years, including but not limited to the former president now. Candidate Mohammed's family, the late President Mills family, the Ahoys, the Chikates, the Moles, the Okrans, the Tetes, the Sawyers, and many others who populated and continue to populate influential spaces within the NDC. But typical of the NDC, whenever confronted with policy bankruptcy, they resort to lies and propaganda. I think that it is important to note, as I said, I don't have large family, and my family members are not part of my political activity. So if I become president, it is only one brother of mine who is technically competent, who can even be part of any administration. But if you have individuals who have large families, who are competent, who have been part of their struggle over the years and has been part of the political structure, there's no way anybody can accuse any government of bringing those competent, superior, technically able men and women to be part of his administration.
So, if you strip off the politics, where are we in the fight against corruption? There's a lot of talk this week about corruption, starting with the president's speech at the bar, the NDC's press conference yesterday and the MPP's one today. So where are we really in the fight against corruption? There's one document that gives us a picture of where we are, and that is the Corruption Perception Index, a document that the Ghana Integrity Initiative helps to compile. On the line with me is Michael Bwedi. He works with the Ghana Integrity Initiative, a chapter of the Transparency International. Mr. Bwedi, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Thank you very much, and greetings to your listeners this evening.
So, if you look at the trend over the last few years, and I know you guys do a lot of scientific work in this area when it comes to the Corruption Perception Index, where are we with the fight? Are we improving? Are we doing well? Are we winning it?
Well, let me say that Ghana, up until 2012, when it scored its highest ranking, we continued to slide. Downward slide from 2013 till 2018 when it stabilized and we had a marginal growth or a modest growth, that is a 1% score increase in 2019. So where we are now is that as of 2019, the CPI score had Ghana reversing the slope.
So that's the very latest CPI.
That's the very latest. So the very latest shows a reverse of the slope. But let me clarify something. Many people are confusing the CPI with the global corruption barometer. There are two different things. The CPI looks at the perception of corruption in the country, and the global corruption barometer report looks at institutions. So I've heard a number of people talking about the global barometer report as if it is the CPI. They are not the same thing. The global barometer report comes out every 2 years, and the CPI comes out yearly. Now, the current global barometer also shows some progress that various institutions have made. So, although, for instance, the Ghana police tops the institution that is perceived to be most corrupt, it makes some marginal progress where it moved to about 59% of respondents thinking that corruption is high, as against 60 something percentage as at 2 years ago, 2017. So, looking at the overall picture, there seems to be a certain marginal growth or increased perception that the corruption, the fight against corruption, we're doing a little better in the fight against corruption. But what we need to warn ourselves is that it's important we don't use data, this data which are collected, what I would say historical facts, to assess current reality. It is important to wait for the 2020 CPI, which will come out between January and February, so that we can make a more informed scientific analysis of the current situation. However, generally, we can say that well, the country is making some progress, has made some modest progress. A reference can be made of the special prosecutor. As at the time when the data was being collected, it was new. So people's perception, hope in him was very high. The paperless port had just been introduced. So people anticipated that it will help deal with corruption at the port. Now, by 2019, when the new CPI by 2020, when the new CPI is released, people will then be able to determine whether indeed the perception or the anticipation or aspiration had met, or the reality had met the aspiration or not. So but you see, I think that all the banter that is going on, what is missing is that what are we not doing right? What are the policy failures or policy decisions that we need to take? I think that we need to focus the discussion in that area rather than who did better and who didn't do well. Whatever the case is the country. It is not about a an individual political party or an individual government. It is about the country. Are we as a country doing well? Are we taking the necessary policy measures that will curb corruption? Are we enforcing the laws that we have passed? Are we capacitating the institution? It's refreshing to know
a lot of the questions
the budget has gone up.
But a lot of questions you're asking right now, the MPP at this press conference try to answer them. They point to some of the policy initiatives that they claim backs the talk when it comes to the fight against corruption, the setting up of the Special Prosecutor's Office, the passing of the new illegal mining law, the commitment to reform the Internal Audit Agency, and say that these are policy interventions that show a commitment. The question is whether the research is showing that over the last few years, indeed, this is translating into improved or less corruption in the areas that we know it exists. And I think from what you're saying, it appears that, well, there is some marginal improvement, not enough.
Yes, Evans, there was some marginal improvement in the various research reports that had been released. What we need to do is also be patient and see how it will reflect in the 2019. I believe that the 2020, which will measure 2019, which will be more of people really feeling or experiencing the impact of the policy decisions, will be measured and will be released by 2020. So the real measure of the policy measures that had been outlined or that was outlined by the president the test would really manifest in the 2020 CPI. So I think people should be patient. However, whether it's manifesting or not, I think Ghanaians are the best judge. Are we seeing more corruption or we're seeing less? Are people being deterred from getting engaged in corruption, or people are now shunning away from corruption? I think Ghanaians are the best judge, and I would give a thumbs up to an interview that my boss gives. It says that when we go to the polls, people will make an informed decision based on their reality, and it's a truth, So I think that the argument should rather be focused on are the policy decisions translating into the people's reality or not.
I'm grateful that you join us with those thoughts. That is Michael Boydie works with the Ghana Integrity Initiative, and they help compile the Corruption Perception Index, which is a very good measure of where you are as a country in dealing with corruption. Also at this press conference was an issue that came up about the government. The NDC had made requests for the government to publish investigative reports on some of the issues bordering on corruption that this government had to grapple with. Well, this was the party's reaction to the NDC on the back of those demands that had been made on that particular issue. John Boydie is the General Secretary of the party.
Let us keep a careful eye on the wolf garbed in sheepskin. That is today's NDC. Can you help all of us answer one question that has bugged me for more than 4 years now? Where is the report on the Ford expedition that John Mahama received as a bribe from a foreign contractor who managed to win road contracts after he was introduced to the president in 2012?
I'm going to take a quick break. When I return, the Africa Center for Energy Policy is taking on the Millennium Development Authority, MIDA, for allegedly what they call the mischievous attempt to shift blame onto others, including the vice president, in a PDS scandal. And what the minority is also saying tonight about the process to get a new entity to replace PDS. Stay with us.
Financial services, providing of legion support and service. Success of loyalty, service with integrity, protective of our Ghanaian brand. 10 years of Texas, 10 years of loyalty. Your success our passion, oh yeah. Your success our passion.
Your success, our passion.
Ma, please give me your phone. Let me make a quick call.
So you're still on that network that gives you fair data and talk time, where Vodafone has double the Red 1, Red 2, and Red 5 offers. For 5 CDs, Chikra. You get 250 minutes to call all networks, 250 megabytes data, and more.
I'm moving to Vodafone today.
Switch to Vodafone to enjoy double Intuswar on red bundles of 1, 2, and 5 CDs. Enjoy double talk minutes to call all networks and double data to browse. Vodafone always gives you more. Dial star 200 hash to subscribe now. Terms and conditions apply.
The future is exciting. Ready?
Thank you, folks. On my A list today, show some love for Contractor EB. So, Contractor,